Greetings all, FerrariMan601 here. Today I want to do something a little bit different. I've been posting videos of absolute bonsai hot laps here in the MP420 at Monza, and I know they all look pretty impressive, and trust me, they are impressive, but I want to show you just why this is so difficult. To do a high 118 around this place, and others have gone faster still, it takes absolute commitment. Everything has to be so incredibly precise in order to get sub 119 in this car at this track. If one little thing goes wrong, the lap is blown. And it may not even be a mistake. It just might be the way the car bounces off of an apex. I mean, you're talking about absolute razor-sharp levels of precision here. Let's talk about what I mean. So we've got the free cam all booted up here at Monza, so we're going to go to the exit of the Parabolica. That is the final corner of the lap, and we're going to talk about how you approach doing a sub 119 lap here at Monza in the MP420. So just fly in here down the straight. Very nice track detail, of course, here in Assetto Corsa. You can see where the old banking would join up to the current racetrack, and here's one of the access roads leading through the Royal Park here at Monza, leading onto the circuit. Gravel trap and grass now covering what was the exit of the banking, and here is the main straight. Here's the exit curbing of Parabolica. You can see here it's very flat, very compliant. You can go wide over this curbing and it does not really affect things. However, from the moment you leave this curbing, you want to start tracking the car back to the inside about this way, just touching this white line with your right side wheels as you approach start-finish. The start-finish line is right here. So that is the timing line where the lap begins and ends. So it is not up by the light gantry at the start of the race. That is the start line. Here is the timing line for the lap. It is really narrow. I would say it's about 1.5 feet across, and that is where you break the timing beam. So here is where the lap starts. When you finish the lap, you want to come across this white line right here with your left side wheels. When you cross the line, not going underneath the circuit, you're going to be right about here with your right side wheel. So not on the line, but not exactly far away from it either. As you come down the start-finish straight, you've pulled 7th gear right about now, so you're building up to 360 kilometers an hour. What you're doing is you are gradually moving off from right to left, passing the DRS activation zone, which is irrelevant for our purposes in the 420, and you're coming down the start-finish straight much faster than this camera is moving right now. As we're coming down, you see the white line here on the pit exit. You don't want to touch that because it can affect you under braking. In the meanwhile, an adjustment that I've made anyway is I've changed the traction control setting from 3 out of 6 to 1 out of 6 by the time I've arrived into the braking zone for the first chicane. Here's the 300 meter board, still accelerating hard, about 360 clicks at the moment, 200 meters still accelerating hard, 150 meters still accelerating hard, and now jumping on the brakes here at about 130 meters or so, coming down from 360 kilometers an hour down to about 80 for the first chicane. So braking, coming down through the gearbox, there goes 100 meters. Now here goes 50 meters. We've now punched up first gear, and we're now going to go turn in to turn 1 here, the first chicane here at Monza. Turn in about here. It's a hard turn in, and you can see all the rubber down on the racetrack from the racing line. Here's the first apex. You want to hit this pretty hard with your right side tires, pretty much the right front for the most part. And you can see here is one of those Max Verstappen sausage curbs going on. You don't want to hit that so hard because it will bounce the car into the air and generally unsettle the balance. But this serrated curbing here, which is just gradually inclined, that is perfectly safe to hit. Coming off of this curbing, you want to immediately start drifting the car off to the left here so you can get yourself lined up for the second element of this first chicane. Accelerating a little bit between elements 1 and 2 of the chicane, but still in first gear. Little dab on the brakes, a little trail braking here as you come across this second apex again here with your left side front wheel. Again, you want to use this serrated, gradually inclined curbing. You don't want to hit this sausage curb at all because that will unsettle the car. Coming off of the curbing, here is where you start to unwind the car on the throttle all the time. Traction control turned to its lowest setting while still being active. The exit curbs here very flat. They can impact your acceleration a little bit, but it is okay to ride them ever so slightly. Pretty much this extent is the farthest you want to go out onto this exit curbing out of turn 1. Now accelerating hard up through the gearbox, big bump right about here on the circuit between gears 3 and 4. Just let the car ride that bump and don't let it unsettle you. you too much. As you go up through the box, accelerating all the time, take your left side wheels and just touch this white line here on the outside of the circuit. Here you're in 5th, about to pull 6th gear as you get into Curva Grande. Curva Grande, absolutely flat out. You start about here, and then what I like to do is I like to tuck it in a little bit early and just kiss this apex curbing, if you want to call that. You can see it's a rain gutter, so it is concave, and we've actually got some drains in here. You don't want to actually get your right side wheels inside the gutter because you're going to bottom out the car. But you can just kiss it with your right side wheels as you're going around the apex here of Curva Grande. 7th gear by this point, 330 clicks, still accelerating all the time. And now as the corner unwinds, you unwind the steering and allow the car to drift out a little bit wider up to this point. About here is about as wide as you want to get. You don't want to touch this white line because that's just adding some extra distance to the lap. Basically, you can see where some of the rubber is on the circuit. Just follow that line for the moment. At this point here, 300-meter board, I am on the wrong side of the circuit as I approach the second chicane, so we have to start pulling the car in to the right, and by about here we're on line, 200 meters to the corner, still accelerating hard, about 353 clicks, 100 meters. Now, the braking point is right about here, just past this bridge. This is a footbridge that carries pedestrian traffic across the circuit. Here is the braking point. You go under the bridge, and the moment the cockpit comes out of the shadow is when you slam on the brakes and go down through the gearbox. So we're about 150, 140 or so meters away from the second chicane. Continue to decelerate all the time, down to 2nd gear by about this point. Here's the entrance curbing for the second chicane. Really, you don't want to touch this because it is going to upset the balance. It is slightly inclined to the outside of the circuit. So basically, just the right side wheels on the white line here as you decelerate. About here, you're doing 80 clicks, and here's your turn-in point. Again, you can turn in wide, so you hit the apex here in the first element of the chicane, again avoiding these sausage curbs. However, these serrations are basically just like turn 1. These are safe. At this point, let the car track out wide to the second element of the chicane and the second apex right here. Again, these serrated curbs are safe. The sausage curbs are not. The car will tend to get a little bit light at the back end off of this apex, so just get on the throttle and allow the traction control to sort things out. By the way, approaching this chicane, I've made a traction control adjustment from 1 out of 6 to 3 out of 6, so I've got a little bit more traction control help at this point. Allowing the car to track out wide, you'll just get the left side wheels over this white line on the exit here of the second chicane. But again, you do not want to ride this curbing too much because you can bottom the car and that's just going to lose you some momentum. Accelerating now all the time up through 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and maybe even 5th gear by the time you get here to the 100-meter board for the first Lesmo corner. Still accelerating hard at this point. By the time we get here, we are braking and downshifting. I put it into 3rd gear here, still on line. 3rd gear and some trail braking, playing with the throttle through the apex point here of the first Lesmo corner. Right where you see this fire marshal, right where the orange paint here is on the Armco, that is where the corner stops turning in and starts to unwind. So that is the apex point. You can touch this curbing, but again, just like in Curva Grande, this is a rain gutter, so it is concave in here, so you don't really want to get your wheel inside it. But again, you can touch the white line with no problem. Now, hard on the throttle, allowing the acceleration to pick up. I pulled 4th gear by this point, running hard over these curbs. You can see these curbs are 100% flat, so no problem, and also you've got some AstroTurf on the outside. This is also safe to run on. Not in the wet, but that's not a problem here in Assetto Corsa. So you can use all the curbing and all of the AstroTurf if you want, but do not touch the grass. Accelerating out off of the curbing, pulling 5th gear now, 100 meters to the second Lesmo. Now, at about 55 meters, we brake for the second Lesmo, down from 5th gear to 3rd gear. Now, coming into the corner, a little bit of an early apex point, as you can see. 3rd gear, at this point, you're already picking up the throttle. The corner here is very, very shallow in its overall camber. There is camber toward the inside of the circuit, which does help you. That's what we call positive camber. But at the same time, you've got the curbing here. It's the same as in Curva Grande, and it's the same as in Lesmo 1. So you do not really want to get inside the curbing so much. However, by this point, we're hard on the throttle again in 3rd gear, accelerating out through 4th, using all of the exit curbing and the AstroTurf here on the exit of the second Lesmo. This is just like the exit of the first Lesmo. The curbing is pretty flat, and you can use this AstroTurf no problem at all. Pulling 4th gear, now 5th gear, coming back onto the circuit where you see the green painted asphalt. That's where you got to start bringing it back in. Otherwise, you're going to run onto the grass, and that's no good. I've pulled 5th gear by this point, accelerating all the time, approaching the signboard, and now the DRS light. 6th gear pulled just before you cross this DRS activation line. Coming down here, the back straight of the circuit through the Serralio corner. Don't touch these curbs. It's another rain gutter. Don't touch it. Just get your left side wheels right up to this white line before you pull 7th gear right about now, and then you start to track out to the right to keep yourself on line for the Ascari chicane. Going downhill, you get a little bit of gravity assist as you're accelerating now underneath the banking, the old banking here that we mentioned before. This is the lowest part of the circuit through the tunnel underneath the banking, about 350 kilometers per hour by this point on a really fast lap. Coming now back uphill toward Ascari, 300 meters. Still accelerating hard, hitting about 358 kilometers an hour, 200 meters. Here is another signboard. This is an important landmark for your braking point, but you're not braking yet. Still accelerating now, about 358 clicks, 100 meters. Still accelerating hard. Now, at about 90 or so meters before the entrance to the corner, start braking from about 358, 359 kilometers an hour down here into 3rd gear for the Ascari chicane. 50 meters, here's the entrance curbing. You can use it if you want. I tend to stay away from it simply because we saw Kimi Räikkönen in 2007 have a big accident here because he did touch that curbing and the car just got unsettled. Same thing can happen to you, so maybe think twice about it. Anyway, approaching Ascari here. Early turn-in. We'll turn in right about now, so you can still see we have some distance of entrance curbing remaining, but I'll turn in a bit early and touch this first apex here with my left side wheels. You can go all across this curbing. It is pretty much entirely flat. It's more or less just painted asphalt, no problem. However, you do not want to go beyond it because you can see here we've got the speed bumps, the sleeping policeman, and that will ruin the lap, no question. So left side wheels across this curbing, no problem, and then you come off of this first apex and you allow the car immediately to track out to the right to about this point when you start turning into the second element of the Ascari chicane. This curbing is also safe to use, but don't stay on it for too long because it changes back here into this rain gutter. So it goes from flat to concave once again. So that will catch you out. So you want to be wide of this curbing by the time it transitions from that flat curbing to the rain gutter, and then it transitions yet again to a little bit more of a steeply inclined rain gutter. So stay away from that. By this point, you're still pretty much following the contour of the inside line of the circuit until right about now. You allow the car to start tracking out wide, now to the left for the final element of Ascari. At this point, it's very important not to get the tread of the tire once again into this rain gutter curbing because that's going to unsettle the balance. What you want to do is just allow the sidewall of the left front tire to kiss inside this white line and just barely overlap itself with the outer edge of this curbing, but not actually go inside it. That is the way to do it. To about this point on the circuit, right where these drain holes are, this is where you want that sidewall to just kiss inside this concave edge of the curbing. You'll feel a little twitch across the front end of the car if you've done it right. Don't worry about it, it'll stamp itself out. By this point, we track out wide, and we can use all of this exit curbing plus the AstroTurf. We continue on a wide trajectory all the way across this AstroTurf until we hit here, this auxiliary asphalt. This is the run-out area from the Ascari chicane, and this is legal. This is admissible in qualifying in terms of the real-world track limit, so you can use this area of the track as your exit. So just keep the car as straight as you can in this runoff area, and then just gradually bring it back in, follow the contour of the grass here as it comes back into the side of the circuit proper. By this point, you should be within the white line once again. If you pick up grass, the lap is blown. down the back straight, going up through the box all the time, pulling 7th gear right about now, coming up to our maximum speed of about 359 kilometers per hour, coming down here the back straight. Just gradually bringing the car off to the left in preparation for Parabolica, because you do not want to scrub off speed coming across the circuit too quickly. Right about here, the 200-meter point, this is where you must be online, and you can see the braking point for some of the road cars that run around here. We're not braking at this point, though. We're still accelerating hard all the way down to the end of the back straight. You see this green concrete here. This is your landmark. Have your eyes tracking the left side of the circuit, and this is your landmark. 100-meter board, don't even worry about it. We're still accelerating by this point. The end of this green tarmac on the outside of the circuit, that is where we brake, right about here, so roughly 80 meters before Parabolica. Come down from 4th gear into 3rd gear, a little bit of an early apex, get your inside wheels inside this curbing. The lower speed is not going to hurt it, even though this curbing is concave, like the majority of the rest of this apex curbing here at Monza. By this point, you're hard on the throttle in 3rd gear. The back end will start to complain, even with traction control. Just work through it. It's okay. Now you've popped 4th gear, coming up to the outside of the circuit, 5th gear by this point. Now, the car will just naturally want to track to the outside. Here is where you've got to dial in a little bit more steering lock to hold it to this line on the left side of the circuit. You don't want to go onto this green. It's just going to cost you time. Now, when the exit curbing comes in, you can ride this curbing a little bit, but don't go too hard over it, because you can see the track is quite severely cambered right here relative to the track surface, which is almost straight and level. Now, coming to the end of this curbing where we started this. Here's the end of the curbing. Now you're on line. However, if you want to just steal a couple more hundredths of a second, start tracking the car back to the right-hand side of the circuit. Once again, taking your right side wheels and just kissing this white line right about now as you pass underneath the signage, and then there is your timing line for a lap which was hopefully done in about 1 minute 18.8 or so, give or take a few hundredths. So hopefully this gives you some insight into why it is so incredibly difficult to run fast here at Monza, even in a car as crazy as the McLaren MP420, because you have to be so incredibly precise when you are driving this car at speed. It is 100% unreal. So even though this car right here, the McLaren MP420, is amazingly quick, you still have to be amazingly precise and amazingly good at managing where the car is and what it's doing in order to really take advantage of that immense horsepower and that immense aerodynamic efficiency. So hopefully this was interesting for you. A little bit of a change of pace in terms of my videos, but I hope that this lends a little bit of insight into just how difficult it is to post these absolute bonsai hot lap videos. So I hope you enjoyed that. Until next time, Ferrari Man 601 saying thanks very much for watching, and we will see you soon.